Hello there. My name is Henry Harris, and I am going to be presenting to you the first part of a series on love, dating, and marriage. That's my abbreviation. Though these ideas are not mine, they're Jewish, I thought it would be relevant to tell you a little bit about myself, because really I'll be sharing with you these ideas kind of filtered through the impact that they made to me on a personal level. So here's my intro. I grew up as what I consider to be kind of a normal American Jewish kid. By normal, I mean I was happy, I was ambitious, I was neurotic, I was a little dysfunctional. And by the time I kind of arrived at the age of young adulthood and relationships, I had high moments and I had rocky moments. And on the whole, I looked out at my future prospects of long-term success in relationships with what I would describe uncertainty. It wasn't until my young adulthood or after college, that I came into contact with kind of Jewish wisdom principles, and more importantly, individuals who really relied on those principles, both in their preparing themselves, searching for, and building happy relationships. And that was kind of like a powerful idea to me. So I was moved by those principles, and I undertook to learn about them. And yes, with a certain amount of bruises and bumps, I did learn about them, and thank God I got married, and I'm now married almost 15 years to an amazing lady. And what I want to share with you are my experiences and what I've learned and what difference these ideas have made to me. Okay, so let's get started. The first idea that I want to share with you is the concept of choice. And really, it's most starkly presented by a Hebrew sentence. And that Hebrew sentence is Ve'ahavta le'reyecha, which means love your neighbor. Now, what's fascinating to me about this statement is that love your neighbor is what we'd call a command. A command means it's like, you have a command to honor your parents, you have a command in Judaism to give tzedakah, you have a command to eat kosher. So too, in the realm of love, you have a command, which tells us that really, as I said to begin, the most startling insight regarding the notion of love, according to Judaism, is that it's a choice. And if it's a choice, that means it's not, i.e. verse, it's not a happening, right? Choice, spell correctly, choice versus happening. We see this all over our culture. When I was a kid, I was massively into, I like to watch this show here called The Love Boat. The Love Boat was great in that you could walk onto a boat and, kind of within the course of a week, if you got to, stand somewhere over here, like on the Aloha deck, and get served a nice drink by this guy. So if you're at the right place at the right time, things could happen to you, and you could really resolve major love issues in the course of a week. But in fact, we know that that's not so practical. Even the way we talk about love in our modern society is very much built around the notion of happening. Like, for example, people fall in love. He was smitten with her beauty. And when Cupid, this guy over here, when Cupid strikes, you are love struck. See, you don't plan and prepare oneself with principles in order to fall down. You fall down. You don't prepare and plan with wisdom principles to get hit, right? These are all passive processes that happen to you. Now, what's amazing is that when you speak to people about, does the Love Boat model work? And they'll kind of laugh. But the reason why there is part of us that likes that model is because when you look more closely at the happening model, what you see is that in the happening model, there's very little risk and responsibility. I think personally that's what's going on there. Principle number 2 that I want to share with you tonight is really, I think, nicely contained in the basic Hebrew word for love. The Hebrew word for love is ahava. And the root of that word, our sages teach us, is right here in the middle. It's what we'd call hav. Hav literally is translated as giving, right? So what that means to say is that I'll speak for myself, I make a mistake typically, even till this day, even in my 15-year-old marriage with my wife, of thinking that my greatest love, pleasure dividend is going to come from receiving. Right? If my wife just, respects me more, holds me in higher esteem, showers me with more attention, or if people in general, if life in general will just give more to me and I will be a greater recipient of all these things, that's where my life is really going to happen. But in truth, it's really the opposite, that in the short term, the dimension of receiving is great, but the real pleasure, and we're all pleasure seekers, and that's why we want love, the real hardcore return on investment is in giving, and that's a paradigm shift. For a person to really get into their kishkas, the idea that the greatest pleasure I want in life is going to come from giving is really essential to being able to transition into the opportunity of enjoying relationships, because relationships involve so much giving in order for it to be successful that a person who doesn't experience the giving as pleasure or is not used to training their consciousness toward giving, they will just find it to be a lot of pain. And I will give you proof, so to speak, that there is more pleasure in the giving, more ROI in the giving than in the receiving, by looking at our relationship with our parents, right? Normal relationship with parents, who has more pleasure in that relationship, right? The parents or the children? I love my parents, and I enjoy their company tremendously, but I have no question in my mind that they just have more nachas. They have more enjoyment. They just get more out of the relationship than I do. And that's for one very simple reason, and that is the level of giving and investment that they put into the relationship is just much higher. Okay? So in short, we have two principles that we're dealing with to begin with, and one is to recognize that it's just love is not a happening, it's a choice. Second, the biggest ROI that we'll get in a relationship and in life, i.e. in pleasure, is through giving, not in receiving. And that hereby concludes part 1 of Love, Dating, and Marriage.